This is the Ushl podcast. Well, hello everyone, and welcome in to another edition of the Ushl podcast. As always, I'm Chris Treft, and I'm with voice of the Des Moines Buccaneers, Ben Gisselson. Later on in the show, we have Reid Cashman, formerly, and I mean formally very loosely because it happened this week, of the Washington Capitals, now the head coach of Dartmouth. So making the switch back to college hockey where he started when he started coaching Quinnipiac. But nonetheless, he's our interview later on in the show. But before that, we actually had some USHL news coming out in June, which is a rarity. And with all the off season and with our crazy end of the year, but it's an important one because we can talk about all the on ice stuff and how important these guys were that scored all the goals and did all the fancy things for the highlight reel. But got to remember, these are still kids. They're still going to school. Mostly all of them are going on to college. So we had the academic awards and the off-ice awards from this past season. So those are obviously very important. They don't get the allure as the MVPs and the goaltender of the year awards, but we'll start off with the all academic team, which is a tough list to get on because there's so many smart kids in the United States Hockey League and guys that are going on to big-time colleges. I mean, the Ivy Leagues of the world are just littered with USHL guys, and that's putting them on a pedestal because there's a lot of great schools with hockey programs that these kids are attending. So the all-academic team in the USHL includes from Tri-City, Kyle Aucoin, from the Dubuque Fighting Saints, Riley Stewart, from Madison, Jack Horback, from Muskegon, Donald Kempf, and from the Dubuque Fighting Saints, Stephen Holliday. Obviously, the Dubuque Fighting Saints get some more award winners. Not only were they great on the ice, and they pretty much won every award you could, but they were great off the ice as well, too, as they had two of the all-academic team members. But that's a really tough list to get on with all the players in the United States Hockey League and to be the best in terms of schoolwork and grades, and narrowing it down to 5. Those are some very bright and intelligent kids.
And we talked to so many of the alums on this podcast, and they bring up how formative these years are, not only on the ice, but off the ice, Chris. And this is a testament to these young men that have been named to this all-academic team, saying they have the gumption and they have the wherewithal to handle not only the pressures and stresses of being a part of a very heavily hockey-focused atmosphere for 62 regular season games and beyond for almost 9 months of their time, but also to manage their time appropriately and be able to still put schoolwork first. So kudos and a huge commendation for me and from you and from all of us that are associated with the USHL to these young men and for their organizations for helping them get it done too, because that's a big component of this too, is you have to have an organization that puts a precedence on this, like I know all of our member clubs do in this league.
And it's impressive because in college, it's obviously tough because you're enduring college courses, but you're only playing 30 or something games. And then you get to pro, you don't have school, and that's when you're playing a ton of games. In the USHL, you're playing 62 games, you're traveling all the time, and you have school, and a lot of the kids that maybe aren't in school, or even some of them do, they have part-time jobs as well to pay for some of this hockey stuff. Not that they have to pay to play, but still, you got to pay to live, right, in some situations. So to be able to be a good student and get good grades in the USHL environment is almost the toughest of any of the levels of hockey. And then to do that and be great on the ice like those guys were as well, that's really impressive. And speaking of off the ice, and not just in terms of grades, but we have a lot of community outreach in the United States Hockey League, and one guy stood above the rest.
On a team that stood above the rest this year, put another feather in the cap of the Dubuque Fighting Saints with their captain Aiden Fulp winning the Kurt Hammer Award. And when you look at the explanation of the Kurt Hammer Award, pride and determination are a part of that description. And there's a lot of pride in that Dubuque Fighting Saints organization. And we talked at length with Oliver David, their head coach, Callie Larson, their GM, about the culture in that room this year. And you don't have good culture in your room if you don't have a great captain. And he wore the C for Dubuque, did Aiden Fulp. And that alone is something that you can talk about with this kid and say he was able to build that culture. But clearly Aiden was not just a force for that team in the dressing room. He did so outside in the Dubuque community. And so, again, definitely it's an award that Aiden wins, but you also want to credit Dubuque for giving him the opportunities to get out into the community, because being someone who works for an organization that also values community outreach like the Buccaneers do, you have to have a staff that's willing to help the players get to where they want to get to in order to win an award like this. And there's no doubt that Dubuque gave Aiden the opportunities to do it, but this is his award to celebrate and be proud of, because you still got to show up and do that work if you're Aiden Fulp, and he clearly did. So a huge congratulations to the Fighting Saints and to Aiden Fulp for winning an award that is very near and dear to the Des Moines community as well, seeing as Kurt Hammer was a longtime advocate of hockey here in the Des Moines community back before my time here in Des Moines, but was a guy who battled cancer valiantly with his family, and the Hammer family is still a big part of hockey in Des Moines, and he battled cancer, but I know from who I've talked to about him that never deterred his joy and his passion for the sport of hockey and all he did in making hockey a thing here in Des Moines. So it's great to celebrate his life and all he did, and of course celebrate Aiden for what he did for the Saints here, not only this season but over a couple of years now, as he's been a Saint for a number of seasons.
And our last award, and it's a guy we talked about just a few minutes ago, it's the Scholar Athlete Award. So we have the all-academic team, but there's one guy that stands above the rest in the Scholar Athlete, and that belongs to, from the Tri-City Storm, Kyle Aucoin. And when I was told these grades and this GPA, I was just shocked. I didn't even know it was possible to be this smart and this good of a student. But he had a 4.9 cumulative GPA, and when it was weighted, it was 5.1. I can't even fathom that. If you had all gym class for me in high school, I still wouldn't have been able to get a 4.9. I mean, that's an incredible number. And that was 24 courses in his last year of high school. So, I mean, those grade numbers, it's obviously, it's not surprising that the kid's going to Harvard, and he's probably going to be a scholar athlete there too. But those are incredibly high numbers for an incredibly bright young man.
I was with you, Chris. I thought 4.0, I thought maybe you could get a couple points over 4.0, but that's why I'm doing what I do now, because I can talk, but some of the thinking and the math skills, I think, skipped my generation and my family. So, and that's with all respect to broadcasters. I love my job, and there are a lot of smart broadcasters out there, but definitely a 4.9 cumulative GPA was never in my past, future, or present. So no doubt. And again, to talk what we talked about before with Kyle and the rest of that list, is not only the ability to do something like that, to be of that nature with your academics in your brain, but to manage the time to still be able to take the course load that he took. You mentioned the 24 courses. To do that on top of playing the competitive and grueling schedule in the USHL is a huge, huge accomplishment. So a big congratulations to Kyle. I'm sure his father, Adrian Aucoin, an 18-year NHL veteran, very, very proud of his son too.
It's a testament to him. It's a testament to his father, and raising an incredibly smart and hardworking young man in the classroom. But it's also a testament to the USHL. We got to pat ourselves on the back a little bit as well, because just in the ECAC, which is all the Ivy League schools, which is even the ones that aren't Ivy League schools, are very, very prestigious universities. 152 players in the ECAC with USHL experience, 61 commits from this year that are going to be going to the ECAC, and then 23 at Harvard players on their roster, and then they have 12 commits going in for next season. Those are incredible numbers. So obviously it's a testament to how much passion the USHL and its member clubs have for making sure kids are great in the classroom as well. And that's just one conference. We're not downgrading the other conferences and saying they're not as smart as the ECAC, which it might be tough to compete with them, but still, just to have that presence in such a prestigious conference with so many great universities is truly remarkable.
But Chris, what you've done, which has been such an excellent move, is to segue us perfectly, speaking of the ECAC, into this week's guest in Reid Cashman, who, as you mentioned earlier, began with the Quinnipiac Bobcats of the ECAC. So I tip my cap to you, sir.
And then he goes back, and now he's been named the head coach of Dartmouth, back to the ECAC. The guy just loves the ECAC. He's on one of the best teams in the NHL as the assistant coach, and he's like, I just love the ECAC, so I'm going to go ahead and go back. And we actually pre-recorded this at the beginning of the week, so we didn't even talk about Dartmouth. He probably knew he was going. He didn't tell us, obviously. So we only talked about the Capitals, so there's not much Dartmouth talk in there. I say not much, and I mean none. But we did talk about Quinnipiac, and we talked about his great hockey career with the Waterloo Black Hawks. He played with Joe Pavelski, worked his way up, decided to go the coaching route and end his playing career early, and that was a great choice because he's become one of the up-and-coming great coaches in hockey. Ben wasn't there with us early in the week because he's got a lot of stuff going on with Des Moines Buccaneers because, in case you guys didn't know, he does a lot for the Buccaneers. So I took this one solo, but it's a good one nonetheless, even though it's Benless, and I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. Joining us now on the U-Show podcast is the current assistant coach with the Washington Capitals, Reid Cashman. How are we doing, Reid?
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
So obviously unprecedented times right now. It's a little bit crazy. We hope to have hockey back here again soon with our crazy playoff format and whatnot. But during this break, what have you been up to? Have you been working at all? You've been studying and trying to get ready for potential opponents? Like what's gone into this quarantine for you?
Well, my wife and I had a baby on April 6th. So that was right smack dab in the middle of quarantine. So that was the first thing we've done. So that actually has worked out really well for me and my family, and I have a 3-year-old as well. So I spent a lot of time with them. Certainly we've kept busy as a staff throughout this quarantine. I think March 12th we got sent home, hung around for a bit, and then once we realized it was going to be a while, we kind of all went our separate ways. Weekly phone calls with Todd Reardon, our head coach. Almost started planning for training camp. With the idea being not the one in the fall, but this when we were going to come back, because it felt like that's what a restart was going to look like. We have not done a ton on other opponents. It's been more, we felt really confident we were going to play hockey. We feel very confident we're going to play hockey again. So we spent all of our time preparing on what our team's going to look like. And then once a format really gets sorted out and figured out, then we'll start digging into opponents.
So a silver lining, a lot of people have said, and you touched on it too, is getting to spend more time with family. And congratulations on the new child. That's awesome. It's actually, you might say it's a little bit unlucky, but it's actually perfect timing because you get to spend more time with the child as opposed to April 6th would have been right in the middle of the end of the season, the playoffs, and you might not have had that quality time that you were able to have.
Yeah, I think that would have been our last regular season, and then we would have jumped right into playoffs and hopefully a deep run. So I've been very fortunate to spend time with Sophia, my newborn, and then Maggie's a 3-year-old, and along with my wife, we've been fortunate to be in a situation where we can actually enjoy some of this time away from work.
All right, so let's get right into what we're here for, the USHL stuff. Obviously, that was way back in 2002, 2003. I'm not trying to, age you at all.
Not that long ago, was it?
Well, for some of the listeners, it might have been. But yeah. Waterloo Black Hawks, it was an incredible year for you. You had 5 goals and 42 assists. You led the entire USHL in assists that year, 47 points in 56 games. Very unselfish player if you look at the stat line, to say the least. But that was an incredible year for you. You guys had a great team. Joe Pavelski was on that team. So what do you remember most about your time in the USHL?
Well, most of those are second assists. I remember that. Not a lot of primaries. It was an unbelievable year for me. What happened was I played 4 years of high school hockey in Red Wing, Minnesota, a big fish, small pond type of thing, and got to Waterloo, and Coach O'Hanley, that was his first year. And it was a complete game changer. And all of a sudden you're playing with guys from outside of Minnesota and outside the Midwest. And, we had Matt Fornatero from Calgary. And so all of a sudden my game was forced to be elevated if I wanted to survive. I started the year, I think it was a healthy scratch the first 5 or 6 games of that year. And so it was a challenge to get in the lineup. But Coach O'Hanley, Coach Stock were unbelievable in the development of me as a hockey player and as a young man. And then we had a really fun group. Like we had obviously Joe Pavelski, who was a superstar even then. But Derek Whitmore was another rookie on that team. Mike Raja, we had great goalies. We just had a good group, and I think our coaches, there was a culture shift, and anytime you can be part of a culture shift, that's exciting. And we kind of all bought into it. I think that year, we won the East that year, and then the next year I'd gone off to college, but then the next year they won the whole thing. So certainly it was a good group of hockey players, but a good group of people that were excited to be part of Waterloo and kind of that culture that Coach O'Hanley wanted it to be.
So growing up in Minnesota, was the USHL on your radar? Was that something that was, when you were little, you're saying, I'm going to play in the USHL, then I'm going to go to college? How did you come to know the USHL, and what went into the decision to go that route?
Man, it wasn't, to be honest with you. Now, this is a long time ago, but when I was growing up, the Twin Cities Vulcans had a team. So I remember going to a Vulcans game when I was a real little kid. But then I never thought about the USHL. I was playing 3 sports all the way through the end. I was actually committed to go to St. Mary's in Winona, Minnesota. I was going to play baseball and hockey and D3. And then my senior year, we made the state tournament. And I had a good state tournament. And Coach Talk saw me there. Chris Talk saw me there. And they offered me a tender after the year. And that was the first time I'd really kind of seriously, I had a plan. I was off to St. Mary's, like I said. But they started recruiting me. I went down there to watch me. My dad went down to watch a game at Young Arena. Right at the end of their year that year, met with the coaches and decided it was worth kind of taking a chance. And I would not be, my career in my life would be vastly different if I had not made that decision.
Well, it's safe to say the USHL has changed a bit since when you played. Like we made the joke that, it was a long time ago, but it really wasn't, a crazy long time ago. But what do you think has changed from the USHL from when you played to the game that you potentially see now? I don't know how much you follow the USHL currently, but a lot of prospects are coming out of the USHL.
Yeah, I think the just how technology, how cutting edge they are with development. I think the league is probably younger than it was back when I played. The focal point of development, and then the level of coaches, either like Coach O'Hanley or Mark Carlson, or the guys that have been there for a long time but have adapted and adjusted, or the new guys that go in there. And whether it was Jim Montgomery or like these guys that have come in and then moved on, or now Brock Sheehan, like there's Marty Murray. I played with Marty Murray, the smartest offensive hockey player I've ever been around in my life. And he's going to be awesome in the USHL. So I think the coaches are at such another level of getting players and developing them so they can maximize their abilities. And you see what their budgets are. You see how big their staffs are. I know I went and visited Waterloo a few years ago. I saw their theater room. They're just, not that we were bare bones, but we kind of were, our resources were not what they were or what they are now.
You felt like you were in the movie Youngblood at times, right?
A little bit. It had a little bit of that feel. We had this guy, Ross Carlson, who I think was 28, but they said he was eligible to play in the league. And it was like his 6th year. He was an awesome guy, but it was like his 6th year in the USHL, and he was like Dalton for sure. And so it's a different league that way.
That 1 year you played was almost an anomaly with the amount of unbelievable players that were in the league. What was it like playing against guys like David Backus and the other great players in that league? Because like I said, that 1 year there was a number of NHLers that came out of that season.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was, and we had a good team. We had a really good team, and every night you were lining up against guys. Now, the one thing I'll say is maybe I didn't realize how good the other guys were. Only no social media, right? So you could look at the stats and see. And I knew David Backus from Minnesota, but some of the like Stasny or some of the non-Minnesotan guys, you just kind of heard about them, and then when you played them, you're like, man, this guy's good. Like that guy over there is really good. But I had a moment. I started versus Lincoln in Lincoln the first time we played in Lincoln, and I started, and they had Ryan Patolny, Danny Ehrman, and David Backus on the line. And I played against them all night, and I just chased them. And that was an eye-opener of how good the league is and how good I had to be. Like, those are 3 of the better forwards in the league. and especially in Lincoln, and the star came down and thunderstruck, and that was kind of a hello moment. Like, you're not in Class A Minnesota high school hockey anymore. It's time to get going here.
Well, they still do that in Lincoln, still to this
Yeah.
day, and that's kind of their thing, right? Well, besides Lincoln, speaking of that, what was some of the other places that, when you went to those places and you played, you're like, man, this is junior hockey. This is fun. What were the other crazy environments or good barns that you went to?
I think ours was the best. I thought when Young Arena was going, it was rolling. It was so loud. It's got the low roof. Those fans are right on top of you. At times, the cowbells I could do without, but I guess when you're the home team, they're okay. They were good at letting you know to shoot the puck on the power play. But those fans are loud, and they're great. Cedar Rapids, obviously, for Waterloo, anytime we went into CR, those games there was fights, there were battles. At the time, I don't think our coaches liked each other. I think they probably do a little bit more now. But I would think our rink, Cedar Rapids rink, and Lincoln's were the three that I really liked to play.
Going back in your career, obviously, you had a great career. I don't know what you would change in any of that, but what would current coach Reid Cashman say to current player, or sorry, not current player, but the player on the Waterloo Black Hawks?
Man, you're lucky. You're so lucky. Honestly, that's what I would tell him. To play for Coach O'Hanley and Coach Talk, to play with that group, to play in the USHL, and what that did for me, both as a young man and as a hockey player, it accelerated my development and my progress, and opened up a world that wasn't going to be open to me. And if I didn't go to the USHL, I would have been fine. I'm sure my life would be good, but because of the USHL, I earned a scholarship. I signed an NHL contract. I played professional hockey, and then D1, and now in the NHL, in the best league in the world. And I firmly believe if in 2002 I don't go to Waterloo, that does not happen.
Your old teammate, Joe Pavelski, obviously he's with the Dallas Stars now, and they have a great team. They have a good chance of making a run at the Stanley Cup final either this year or in the future. Your Washington Capitals, we all know how great they are. So if you two ever meet in the Stanley Cup finals, what would that bet look like?
Well, I know it wouldn't be equal. It'd have to be prorated from my contract to his contract and career earnings for sure. So I would probably, if we lost, I'd get him a golf shirt. And I think if he lost, I think he'd get me a golf membership, I think is what the bet would be. But Joe's incredible. I mean, and I mean this in the best possible way, he's the same player now that he was when I met him when he was 18 years old. So smart, unbelievable stick, and eye, and then work ethic. And that's like, we were getting ready to play him in San Jose, and now last year in Dallas, and that's the same stuff we saw. Like, I remember I did the pre-scout 2 years ago for the PK for San Jose, and I got crap from our staff, like, enough with Pavelski and all the tips. But I was like, if our D don't recognize in front of the net where he is and know he's going to change his sticks, like, he's going to kill us. So he's the same player, and that's a testament to him of how good he is.
I think he's a great guy too, because they obviously had the outdoor game, and we had a game the next day, and it was in the middle of a crazy media scrum, and he did a bunch of interviews, and he was all done, and he clearly was like, I'm sick of talking to people. And I went up and I said, hey, can I have a minute? And he kind of gave me a look, and I'm like, I'm with the USHL. I just want to see if you can give some messages to the USHL kids who are going to play in the outdoor game and someday want to play in the Winter Classic like you. And he spiked right up and was like, yeah, no problem. And just gave a little interview with me. But I think he's an incredible guy off the rink too.
Yeah, he's a great man. He was one of the first calls I got when I got this job. And he helped me tremendously. Just what the league was going to look like, what the best coaches he's had, how they've dealt with him, how they've dealt with superstars, working with the best players in the world. He's been great, and I don't think, like, his hockey hasn't changed. What he is what he's good at. He's always been good at. I think his personality hasn't changed. He's still a great kid from Plover, Wisconsin, from a great family, and that's again a true testament to Joe.
So you're done with your one season in the USHL, and then you go way far away from home, Quinnipiac. You said you were, committed to play D3. Obviously, you showed that you were a better hockey player than D3. So you switched things up to Quinnipiac. What went into the decision to go all the way out to the Northeast when you've been a Midwest guy your whole life?
Yeah, I was limited with options, to be honest with you. Most of the schools, most of the WCHA at the time wanted me to go back and play I guess it would be an overage year in the USHL and work on my skating, get better. That was my biggest knock. Quinnipiac offered me a great opportunity. I flew out not knowing anything about the school. Rand Pecknold, Ben Sire, and Scott Robson did a great job, and the tour is an amazing campus. Like, I stepped on campus, I was like, it was right out of a book, like a tour guide. It was unbelievable, pristine. And then there was an opportunity to play as a freshman there, graduating 3 senior D-men. So it all just kind of lined up. And again, just like USHL was worked out for me, I think Quinnipiac was the absolute right decision, because I went to a school that I got to play right away. I got to develop. I didn't know it, but my junior year we go to the ECAC, so that elevates us. My senior year we built a brand new rink, so that elevates us. So it was just, I was very fortunate with timing, but I had a lot of belief in Quinnipiac University and Rand Pecknold and really Ben Sire and what their vision was of the program.
Well, you're named captain in your senior year. You end up getting 41 points in 40 games, which is incredible from a defenseman in a conference. It's so tough for goals to be scored. But that earns you your chance at pro hockey in the 06-07 season with the Marlies, and then ended up signing with Toronto, and then that's when the pro career takes off. And what was the biggest adjustment from college hockey to pro hockey? Because it's such a different game. College hockey is a little more defensive. Sometimes you're playing in Olympic-sized rinks, and the schedule's a lot smaller. So what was that transition like?
I mean, honestly, the biggest difference was you're playing with and against grown men, and you're playing with people who are supporting their family. And so the level of competition ramps way up. The margin of error is razor thin. That was something I was not as prepared as I should have been. I needed to be more prepared on myself to be ready to compete for ice time. Like, nobody cared that I was an All-American in college. Nobody cared that I signed an NHL deal. There's 54 other contracts in Toronto's organization. And it took me a while to figure out, like, I had an assistant coach, Jimmy Hughes, who believed in me, but eventually he's like, Reid, like, you got to start taking food off of somebody else's table. Like, and that was a weird dynamic, a weird thought for me to have, that I had to start not out competing, because competing was never an issue for me, but just that mindset of, I need to be better than the guy next to me, and he's got 2 kids and he's playing for them, and I need to ramp it up here a little bit.
So you end up having a pretty good pro career, mostly in the American Hockey League. And then in your second to final year, you're with Milwaukee, but you also spent some time in Cincinnati, and you were able to make a playoff run with them. And I talked to your old head coach, Chuck Weber, about this, and he told me to say, do you have any stories from that cup run in Cincinnati?
That was by far my best professional year. I spent the majority of the year in Milwaukee. We had a good team. I had success in the American League for the first time, really, and then we lost in the first round, so I got sent down. Right at the end of the first round for Cincy. So played the second, third, and fourth round. Third round, we were down 0-3 to Reading. It was incredible, actually. We were down 0-3, and we didn't have a chance. Reading had like 10 contract send-downs. They were playing so good, all this momentum. We got pumped in game 3, and then the Reading Arena had rented out their arena to Bon Jovi to get ready for a world tour. And so the rink was closed. So the game, there's a 4-day break in between game 3 and game 4. And so we honestly were like, well, at least we get 4 more days of per diem. And that first day off was Cinco de Mayo, and our team did some bonding on Cinco de Mayo. And all of a sudden came to the rink 2 days later, and just kind of we were just different. And we went out and beat them in game 4. and it wasn't even close the rest of the series. But I think if Bon Jovi wasn't going on a world tour, I think we get swept. So we always talk about that. And then the only other one that you might be alluding to is Game 5 in Cincy. About 10 seconds left to go in the game. We're up 1. This clinches it. If we lose the game, we go back to Boise for Game 6 and 7, and I have the puck. There's no one within 20 feet of me in the corner of the ice. But what happened was, like, all the forecheckers were coming to me. Like, I saw like 5 guys coming to me. So I'm like, I'm just going to rim this puck out the weak side. There's nobody over there. Rim it out. Game over. Let's celebrate. Have a good time. And I rip this puck right into the back of the net. It pops off the back of the net, right onto one of their guys' sticks. Wrap around. Our goalie has to make this acrobatic save, ridiculous save. We win the game. We're celebrating. And our captain, Barrett Eggetts, is like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it was funny. We just had the 10-year reunion, and since he replayed the game. And so on YouTube. So I watched the third period, and I was just waiting for him. Like, it wasn't that bad of a turnover, was it? And I'm watching. I'm like, I can never get mad at a player for turning a puck over ever again after that turnover.
Yeah, that's exactly what Chuck said. He's like, don't say anything, but just ask him if he has any stories. And if he doesn't say anything about Game 5 and shooting the puck in the back of the net, then you have to chirp him for it.
Not in the back, but I just hit the back of the net. And ultimately that's what you have goaltenders for, is they got to make saves in big times. And
Did you buy the goalie some dinner or what?
I don't know. We had a fun time. It was pretty cool to go 4 rounds and win a championship. I don't care what level. High school, USHL, pro hockey, whatever level pro hockey. That was a pretty special feeling to win a championship with a group of guys.
So back to the Bon Jovi thing. Was Living on a Prayer your guys' win song after that, or what?
I tell you, every single tomorrow there's a group of us that send a text just thankful for Bon Jovi in that world tour.
Yeah. Bon Jovi doesn't even realize it, but the Cincinnati Cyclones are all fans of his.
100%.
So your pro career comes to an end, and then you decide to go into the coaching ranks. You start off with Quinnipiac. You go back to your alma mater. Was that something that was always in the cards? Were you always thinking about being a coach after you were done playing, or did you just kind of pop up like some guys say, I didn't think about it, somebody asked me and I did it? What was your story?
I think as I was playing pro hockey, like every year there's a group of veterans that retire. And especially in the minors, you start to see what those guys do when they're done. And it's challenging for guys. A lot of guys, like, you've been playing hockey your whole life. Now you're 27, 28, 29, 30. You certainly haven't made enough money to retire and not work. And so you just start to take notice. I started to take notice of what guys were doing. I started to really think about what I wanted to do. Coaching became something I had a strong desire to do. The more I talked to guys in the coaching world, whether it was Rand Pecknold or Coach O'Hanley or just friends that were in there, basically they're like, the longer you play, the better you are from the standpoint of that'll help your resume, and then work on building relationships. So I didn't have a plan to go back to Quinnipiac. That job just happened to open up. I called Rand about it. We talked. He actually hired somebody else. I was like, no problem. I had a contract to go back to Germany and Cologne in the DEL. And then middle of August, I was just about to leave to go over to training camp. And the previous hire kind of fell through. And he's like, I got a job for you. And I just gotten engaged to my wife. We talked about it, and we're like, what a great opportunity. I got lucky. I skipped a bunch of steps to go right to a Division I program. I knew I was skipping steps. I knew I was fortunate. I knew my alma mater was the only place that was going to happen. And so I probably quit playing hockey a few years before I really wanted to. But again, I've been fortunate. It was the right choice.
Well, speaking of skipping steps, you go from the NCAA to the American Hockey League. That's something that doesn't happen too often. I'm not saying it's never happened. I mean, look at this year when you have a USHL coach going straight to the American League. So, I mean, crazy things have happened. But why do you think you were able to go from Quinnipiac to Hershey so quick?
Our team success at Quinnipiac had as much to do with it as anything. I was there 5 years. My last 4 years, we went to 4 NCAA tournaments, 2 national championship games. I think we were 1 win behind North Dakota for the most wins in that time span. I mean, we were rolling. We had good players, and so because of that, because our team had success, individuals started to have success. So that means we had guys signing NHL deals, and then as coaches, we got opportunities, and I got an opportunity because of that. The other thing that happened was relationships I had previously kind of manifested into an opportunity. So Todd Reardon was the assistant running the D in Washington at the time. He knew what I was doing and how I was coaching D-men. Thought that would add value to the organization when there was an opening. The head coach in Hershey, Troy Mann, I played for my rookie year. Todd, I played for my second year. And then Lane Lambert was also on staff in Washington. I played for my third year in Milwaukee. So all three of those guys, kind of had to vouch for me and the person I was. And if I was a not a good person or not a good pro for any one of those guys, I wouldn't have gotten that. So team success and then previous relationships led to an opportunity for me.
So then you follow with Reardon up to Washington, become the assistant coach of the Washington Capitals. You're an NHL coach quicker than others, which is a testament to your work ethic and that professionalism that you spoke of. But you go into a Washington Capitals team where it's loaded with stars, Ovechkin, Backstrom, Carlson, just to name a few, right?
Yeah.
And it's the year after you win the they win the Stanley Cup, and then you come in. That had to be terrifying, difficult. Like, how did you handle that as a first-year coach in the National Hockey League with all of those elements that you have to go through?
Yeah, it was terrifying. I mean, and that, again, Joe Pabs helped me out kind of a little bit with what to expect. But, I was opening night. We played Boston. I'm on the bench. I'm 35. I've never played in the league. Brooks Orpik is 3 years older than me. I look at our D corps, and all 6 that are playing that night and our 7th D are the same 7 D that won the Stanley Cup 3 months before that. So they had just won the ultimate prize. They had just reached the pinnacles of their careers. And here I am, the banner's going up and the place is going bananas. And I'm kind of like, oof, I hope somebody doesn't come kick me off the bench. Like, hey, you're not supposed to be there, sir. But after the puck dropped, all of a sudden I was like, here we go. And instinct takes over. There's a lot of work for me to be done to get up to speed at that level. There was a lot of faith put in me by Todd and by Brian McClellan, which I'm extremely grateful for. They didn't put any training wheels on me. They were like, here you go run the D. Like, play John Carlson as much as you want, play Brooks the way you're going to play Brooks, and coach them the way you want to coach them. And obviously I had to adapt and learn what they liked. And it comes back to relationships again. I had to form those with those guys. But I had support from my bosses, and then those guys were great pros. Those two, John Carlson, Brooks Orpik, and then Matt Niskin, those three ran our D corps, helped me along the way. I'd like to think at a certain point, not right away, at a certain point, I earned their trust, where I could start pushing them in different areas. But it's been a great organization and a great experience.
So aside from hockey, you got hired right in the middle of the summer of Ovi. How was that experience?
You know what? He's special. That's a pretty obvious statement.
Yeah.
But he's an awesome leader. Like, that guy cares about winning and about his teammates more than anything. So, like, that celebration that you see out of him was so genuine. And yeah, he was happy for himself for sure, but he was so excited for that group that won it, and probably even more so that tighter group that had gone through the losses, and with Backy and John and Holt. And I mean, he is very genuine with how good of a leader he is. Surprised shouldn't be the word, but until you're around somebody and get to know somebody, you don't really know. But he is very genuine in his leadership, and how much he wants other guys to win, other guys to be successful. I can't tell you how many times we've had to tell him, shoot the puck. Like, Ovi, shoot the puck. You're the greatest goal scorer of all time. Just quit passing. But he does. He's unselfish. He gives up empty netters. He knows he's going to get his. And so he wants to win. And that kind of all came through.
One more for you here. So back to the USHL side of things. For all the coaches in the USHL, and there's a lot of really good ones, including your former teammate in Cincinnati and Wheeling, Brock Sheehan.
For sure.
But what would you say to these guys as advice to try to get to where you are? I mean, obviously you were a player in the USHL, but now you're looking at coaches in the USHL that aspire to be in the National Hockey League in some capacity. What do you say to those guys?
I just know that my route has come because of relationships I've built in the past. And I have never had a plan. Like, I haven't had a plan where I needed to leave Quinnipiac within 5 years, or I needed to be in the NHL by the time I was 35, or I needed to be a head coach by the time I'm 40. Like, I haven't had any of those plans. What's happened is I went to Quinnipiac and worked as hard as I could, and our team had success, and I tried to work hard, and then the next opportunity came because of team success and because of some of the relationships I've had. Then Hershey, 2 years, if I wouldn't have held up my end of the bargain, I would not have gotten promoted just because I played for Todd, but you work hard, your team has success, you have relationships. So that would be the thing I would tell you. I think I got that advice early on where there is no route. It's just like with players. Like, there's no perfect route. There's not, if you play for this program, you'll get your scholarship, you'll go to the NHL. Every guy's a little different. High school hockey's right for some, midget's right for others. And so if you're doing it for the right reasons, you treat people well and you work hard, and then you got to have some success. I took a pretty good actually pay cut to leave Quinnipiac to go to Hershey, but it was the right thing for me and my family. It was the right decision for my development. It was right in my heart to keep developing and get out of my comfort zone. And I think if that's your mindset and it's more habit-based than outcome-based, that's what's worked for me and where I've gotten to where I am.
Awesome, Reid. We really appreciate your time. Obviously, you do a great job representing the USHL in the National Hockey League and kind of setting a path for the next wave of people to, whether it's playing or coaching, to follow in your footsteps from the USHL to the ranks of professional hockey. So we thank you very much for your time today, and best of luck going forward with the Capitals once we get back underway. And once again, thank you.
Appreciate it, guys.
Well, I really enjoyed that, Chris, and I was really happy with all the points that I was able to get across in that interview. I'm going to pat myself on the back for a job well done with Reid Cashman.
We because you've been such a homer lately, we just found a way to avoid the homerness, and then you still find a way to bring it back in.
Exactly. How can I promote Ben Gislason and the Buccaneers? When I walk into the podcast every week, that is my one and only goal.
Yeah, there's an agenda here. You guys don't know. Ben he's just trying to slip as much Bucks talk in as he can, and so I mean, yeah, we totally get it. It's Homer Simpson is his name.
Hey, you caught the Kurt Hammer little intro at the beginning. Yeah. I'm surprised I didn't catch any flack from you after I said that, but I got it in.
Well, it's
my owners will be happy. They'll be happy.
Well, we couldn't cut it in there because we were such serious topics. Kurt Hammer's a prestigious award, and then we had the academics. So I was going to wait till the outro to give you slack for it.
No, good stuff, Chris, and thanks to Reid for getting us that time, and well done on your part, Chris. And we're looking forward to hopefully getting some more ECAC members in here in the future.
Now I have a question though. I wish we could have asked him this, but he's now the head coach of Dartmouth. The NHL is restarting. In the playoffs, is he gonna stay with the Capitals, or are they just gonna not have a coach for their defensemen for the playoffs?
Well, this is another one of just those unprecedented situations, right? This is something hockey's not used to having to worry about. Usually all of this shuffling, the changing of not only coaches, but you're looking at potentially, we haven't seen it yet, but will there be contracts that come up for players before the season officially ends? Because dates of contracts, probably you look at a lot of them that come up in July, where that free agent window opens up. So I don't know how they're handling this. I wish I had an insight into it. I don't. But you're right. That's a big question mark. I would imagine it might just be something where they can get on without him. But because at the same time, I'm sure there's a lot of work that he has to be doing at Dartmouth to get ready for their season whenever that's going to begin, even though it's not as impending from a close future perspective as the NHL is. But that's a really good question. And I just, quite frankly, do not have an answer for you.
Well, guys, I'll take the guesswork out of it for you. According to the Washington Post, he will remain through the playoffs if they are actually held this summer.
All right.
There you
I
have
wish
it.
we would have known that before we recorded it, Brent, but I guess we'll leave this in here. We can leave that in. Well, let's leave it in there.
Hey, any show with a Brent drop, the ratings are just going to go through the roof.
Yeah, agreed.
So
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but thank you.
The Mesky fans are the Mesky crazies are gonna be coming out in full force because they heard about your 10-second drop. Almost as good as the color guy from Major League.
Almost.
Well, that's it for this show. We have tons of episodes upcoming. We're not going to slow down or stop this at all. We've recorded a ton already. We're recording even more, so make sure to stay tuned to our USHL social media pages and our Fancy New tab on the website to make sure to be ready for all of our new and upcoming shows. And we have some great ones coming up here soon, I can tell you that much. So for Ben Gisselson and Reid Cashman, I'm Chris Treft, and this was the Ushl Podcast.
This is the Ushl Podcast.